Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me at K Warner Studio. Today's video I will explain and show in parts how I made this filigree die cut into a shaker portion for this card. Now this can be done with any die that has a lot of detail through the center and then a continuous fine lines all the way through. Now they can't be so fine that it won't hold any weight. So that's the other thing. The components that are inside the shaker card has to take into consideration how wide the perimeter is, because if it's really narrow, it's not going to be able to hold really big beads or anything, which is why I have these small little glass beads in there with a few seed beads. Okay, so let's get into this, and then it is finished on both sides in case it flips over, so we'll get into that as well. So here is the die once it's cut out. Now this is 120-pound cardstock. I would suggest that you use the heaviest cardstock that you can find, and even on some pattern paper, on the big 12 by 12 sheets, there's a packing layer that is thick. You know, I don't mean chipboard, but the stuff that's paper, it can be heavy. So in a pinch you can use that if you don't have a heavy cardstock. But 110 is good. I mean, if you have to, then just use 80 or whatever. It's just that the heavier the cardstock, the thicker this is going to be and the easier it's going to be to handle. So when I looked at this, I noticed that there were compartments within that I could use to stabilize the shaker portion. So what I've done is I've removed this part here to expose this portion. I left the two center bars in because that would give a lot of stability, and then I just cut this section out. So here we have this pocket, and then this one here too was removed. So now we have these distinct pockets that will allow us to embellish them. I ran the paper through the die cutting machine and I cut about 7 of these, and there's an extra in case you have some problems with your adhesive. And then you can also cut one with this fun foam. Now it's not overly thick, but if you do use a layer of the fun foam, it cuts down on the amount of paper that you use, and also it makes the shaker portion lighter in weight than all paper. So that's a decision you'll have to make. When you cut it out, you leave all of this intact until you're ready to use it, because this kind of stuff shrinks with the pressure of the die cutting machine, and so you want that to come to life before you start to do any altering. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the top layer. This is glitter paper that doesn't shed glitter. So the reason I bring that up is because this has a coating over the top to keep that. So sometimes you might have to run the die machine a couple of times to get it. So you put your die down. A girl won the die, which is why I don't have it to show you. So you put the die down, and then you put your paper on top and you run it through. Now with this one here, the die, the paper was this way and the die was on top, and then when you bring them you have mirror images of one another. So if you want to play around with that for a little bit with just plain cardstock before you get the good stuff out to see if you've figured out how to do it. So one, the die is on top of your glitter paper, and the other one, it is underneath, and your paper has the white on top, because you can see that this is where the die, where the cutting was done on this one, and on this one the cutting was done on the front. So that's the difference. Okay, so then we have the two front and back. So as I say, I have multiple layers, and this is all cardstock, and then I have another one here that is, find it, I'll be all set, is fun foam. Oh, here it is. Fun foam inside of the paper. So this is the fun foam, and then this is the layers of cardstock. Not much difference other than the weight. So I don't know if you can hear the difference. One is heavier, at least twice as heavy. Okay, so here we are. So let's put this way. So what happens is I layer the cardstock up, and the key here is the glue. I also use a little sponge. I put my glue down on, I have one of these little sheets, Teflon sheets I guess they are, from Stampin' Up, but you can use any one. I have another one, a Betty Crocker one, that I use as well. And so just, and probably one of those Tim Holtz things will work too. So, and then this here's a Heidi Swapp one. Anything like that will work. It's underneath my thing here, so I'm sorry I can't show it to you, but anyway, anything will work as long as you can wipe the glue off when you're done. So I put a little dab of glue, it'll go a long way. So here I use Tombow, or you can use excuse my arm, funky glue, that works well too. Okay, so I just take the sponge and I dip the end in here, and then I make sure that I get the joints well and all the way around. So I pick an end to start with and work your way down or work your way up, one or the other. So that's how that's done. And then after I have so many on there, so now I have a piece of paper, the fun foam, and another piece of paper, and then I attached the window sheet to the back onto the paper, because that's how it's going to stick the best. And then I want this stocking to be blue, so this is a shimmer paper, and I've cut that image out. I've laid a layer of the white cardstock underneath it, and then I attached these two to the window sheet, or the acetate, whichever you like to call it. Now I also want to tell you that these Curad alcohol wipes, if you can find different makers of them, I know that they are in, you know, multiple locations, but you don't need to get high quality ones because you're just wiping up after yourself, but it will remove the glue in no time. Okay, so here we have this off the window sheet, so you would clean it off of here, not on your paper. So then we have our window sheet here, so I'm going to remove the paper one because I'm going to use this one. Okay, and I have my backing here. So on this side I will have to put this one when we're done. Okay, so this is my top layer with my cardstock attached. So it's just like this. So I have the acetate on this one, and this one here I'm going to attach to this acetate when we're finished, and you're happy with the way it's all laid out and all of that. Okay, I got a little bit of glue on here, so I'm just going to take my alcohol swab. I just let it run in the glue, and I didn't mean to. So, and then I just have a nice clear cloth and I wipe that off, and it fixes it all up in relatively no time, where if you had to clean that off with your finger or a scraping tool, you'll just make a mess of the acetate. So I'll lay that there. Okay, so now we're going to look for some beads. Now this is light because it's made with the foam, so we're going to go light. So here I have these little beads, and if you're in Canada, I bought those from Dollarama, I believe. Yes, they were, and they were in these little jars with cork. So if you have an opportunity to go there, they're down with you know, the ends where they have ribbons and things like that on the craft aisle. So pick yourself up some, because in this kind of a thing they're good. And also these beads here, they're from Art Ingredients. They're glass beads. They work well too. But what happens here is that you want an assortment. So you want more of the lighter beads and less of the heavy beads. And I'm just trying to pick out a few little colors here so I can make a decision. You can also buy these little beads with art ingredients as well. They're called micro beads. So here we have some silver. So here are the two different kinds. They're very close in weight, color, size, the whole bit. So just help yourself, you know, get what you like and go with that. So I'm going to get some red here because I think red and blue will be nice Christmas. So when I look at this, I'm fussy, that blue and this blue, even though they're both blues, they're kind of clashing. One's a royal blue and one's a navy blue. And that's the same case with this one in my view. So I'm going to go with red and silver. And this is kind of a rust color, so I don't really want that one. So we'll go silver and red. So in here, I'm going to put a few of these silver ones. And because they're separate little compartments, everything is in here safe and sound. It won't migrate from one compartment to the other if you have the right glue. If you do not, then the whole thing is going to come open because there's weight in here. And even though it's not a heavy weight, it is still a weight. It's enough to push the layers apart. Okay, so we'll go with those silver there. And then I'm going to go with this red. These are the glass beads from Art Ingredients. I'm just going to put a couple in each one. Not many. You just want the shake, shake sound. And you don't want these to puff, be so much that it won't close. That's what I'm trying to say. The other thing too is that these will make lovely embellishments, even nice Christmas decorations these would make for the tree. Get away from the baubles and into something different if you choose to. I'm putting these in because they just have a blue hint. They look a little different when they're all in the jar, but you can see the red and blue in the center of these. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so now we're going to get down to the gluing. So I have my acetate attached to this already. As I said, it's on the front portion between the blue and the white cardstock. And I'm just going to apply my glue just around here with this foam. You don't have to have this foam. You can use whatever you want to use. A sponge. I found that the little glue pens, Nuvo, Sakura, all of those didn't give me a firm hold. So Tombow, Funky Glue, and even the Nuvo Deluxe Adhesive will work. But I found that if it was tacky glue, like this stuff here is, it works much more securely. So we want to make sure we get these cross sections, because they're going to give stability to your item here. And we have a little straggler of hair. I have two little dogs, and I can see I've got one of my little doggies' hairs in there, and then that's made me put some glue in here. And yes, it's a little finicky at times, but they're beautiful. It's a beautiful look to a card or anything. It doesn't have to be a card. And you can make a bunch of these. So Tracy, one of the gals that asked me if I would show her how to do these, she's going to be at Craft Fair in Calgary, and perhaps you can get out to see her and then next weekend. And I like to put the glue on after I have the items in, because if not, it makes more of a mess, I found. But you may be neater than I am. I'm not exactly known for being a neatnik. sure I get this cross section here. So as I mentioned, there are all kinds of different dyes available that have filigree, and then other ones, you know, like for example, Halloween things. Let's look at those. You have gates and cauldrons and things. So here's the acetate that's attached to one layer of cardstock and my top layer. And I'm just going to apply that. So you've got your 2 layers of acetate, one on the front and one on the back. And then we have this one here, and then I trim it down after I'm done. So I want to make sure I've got that lined up just as good as I can get it. And don't worry if you've got a little bit that's sneaking out. You can always do a little bit of alterations later if you need to. So that's that. And then I like to just put a little bit of weight on here for a few seconds. And just push that down, push that down. So what's going to happen here is you might have a little bit of glue that comes out, but that's good because that means you've got enough. Okay, so we're just going to let that sit. And so here's this side. You can see what's inside here. And then here is one finished side. And then while that's sitting like that, I'm going to put out a little more glue. And on this one, I'm going to put the glue on the paper side. That's the trick. You don't want to take your glossy or shimmer paper or glitter paper or even foils that have a coating on them, and I don't think that, well, I know it won't stick for a long term to the acetate. It will work its way off with the bending of the item. So just putting it in and out of envelopes, that motion, and then the increased weight with your beads will cause it to separate, and you don't want it to separate. Now where there's no beads going in this portion because we have the acetate already firmly attached to the other piece right here, the trick here is you don't need to put too much glue on here, like overly. You're not going to have any weight on this portion. The portion is the acetate, which is why the gluing portion of the cardstock to the acetate is important, that you have a nice, heavy, sticky glue. Now you might have a Q-tip to apply things with. That's fine, whatever you want to do it with. The only thing with Q-tips, though, as I'll tell you, is that sometimes the cotton ball will come off and you'll get just a big blob of stuff all over your item. I have these special Q-tips that are pointy. I think they're made for like infants. They'll work because they don't have as much cotton, and you just pull the end off of that. Okay, so now I've got a little bit of glue down here on the bend. I'm just going to scoop that out now before I get it on the acetate, and then I have a little spot on this end too, so we'll get that off of there. It doesn't really matter, I guess, because it dries clear, but I don't want it sticking everywhere. Okay, so now we're going to lay this down again. So we're going to start with the top. Go, and we're going to work our way down, lining up those lines. Okay, and then bring that down around. There we go. As I said, any part that's sticking out on the side, don't give it too much thought because you can figure that out later. And so you can see we've got this part completed. And then we are just going to, let's see if I can move that over just a tad. Now you know there's no glue on this part here, there's no glue on this part here, and there's none here either. So the only thing you really have to worry about is lining up the lines. And then we just trim this all down, and it looks a little icky right now because you have all the glue, but it doesn't take any time at all to clear it up. And then I'm just going to push that down like that again. So that's it. There's really nothing to it. And these extra ones are on the outside. They're not coming off of the shaker portion. They're just coming where I put them down and they fell on there. So that's that. Now, some people like to take the duster that you use for your embossing and go all around that. I find that this is just static, and after a while the ones that are hanging up here will fall. But if that's important to you, then before you attach your acetates front and back, I would run that powder device. So they come in a couple different ways. They come this way or this way. So a powder bag, or this is the EK Success one. So you can use either one of those and go into the pockets. I just find that it leaves an awful mess on your acetate. And where this is really just static cling, it will loosen as it goes. Now, as you can see, I don't have very many beads and things in here. You absolutely could put more than that in there. So that's as easy as that is. And then I just tied a bow, and on this side here I have some twine, so I'll show you how I did that. I'll just use gold. I know I don't have gold in there, but that's what I'll catch first. And maybe I have some kind of silver. There's silver. Okay, so this is like a cording. I would suggest you use something like that, a baker's twine, something a little bit heavier. And all that I did for that is, now I have this kind of a thing. That will work too. It's in a blur, like a silver embroidery floss. That's fine, but not this stuff, like the thread. That's way too thin. Okay, so you just cut a piece about 3 inches long, let's say. That's about 3 inches. I'll measure it so you know. From here to here. Well, it's 3 3/4. Okay, so what we're going to do is, you want a sharp pair of scissors when you do cut your acetate down. Just right up to it. I mean, don't you worry about right up to it, and then if you have to cut off any of your portions because they're overage, just get an X-Acto knife. But it's, you know, if you lay them on top of one another closely, there's not going to be too much. And then, and if the sides are important to you, that you cover up the sides, be careful with your Glimmer pens and Spectrum Noir and all of those, because they're water-based and you don't want to get too much water onto your project. With glue and water and paper don't really mix too well. And then you just put glue on your cord, just like I did there, and then you put them in place on your stocking. If I can get this one to pay attention to what I'm trying to do. And then you just push down. Take your pokey tool, run it down, and then if later you realize it's not as stiff as you want, you just add a couple more beads of glue and run it down with a toothpick, anything that you can spread it down with a pokey tool, whatever, and it's as simple as that. So that's how that is. And then I just attached a bow right up here and attached it to the card. So it's as simple as that. So here we have a blue, and here we have the silver. And also, you know, you might want to have some kind of an alkaline paint and paint your foam and your stuff if you want, but I didn't do that. I just took my Wink Stella and my Spectrum Noir and run it down the side. I also used, see if I can find it, one of these. It's a Krylon pen in silver, because that's more of an oil base and it's not going to be too bad because you can just run it quickly. Silver marker would work great. Blue marker, whichever you want. Just make sure that things that are water-based, you don't allow them to soak in. You just give it a light coating, let it dry, and go over it again. So there you go. I hope that you give it a try. Thank you for taking the time out of your very busy day to spend it with me. And don't forget to put your name in for the drawing. The giveaway of the glitter and the baddie bones by leaving a comment on this video, and you must be a subscriber. Thanks so much. See you next time. Bye-bye.